Welcome to this segment of Understanding Criminal Behavior, a sort of quick fix designed to help you better understand what motivates criminals and how they conduct business. My name is Mike King, and I am a retired police officer and criminal profiler. For the past 40 years, I've had the unique opportunity to work with law enforcement all around the world in areas of criminal investigations, in the development of real-time crime centers and intelligence centers, and in our emergency communication centers. I had the opportunity to be trained by the best in the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, and I'm deeply grateful for the training that I received at the hands of people like Greg Cooper and John Douglas. Well, let's get started. Like you, lately I've been really intrigued by two missing children from Idaho. And I've done a little research on the web, some of which I'm going to refer to here as I go through some of this, but I wanted to spend a moment and talk about them as part of this discussion. You might remember their names, JJ or Joshua Vallow and his sister Tylee Ryan. Now, I've had a number of people who have asked me about these cases, wanting to know my opinion on them. And I'll repeat now what I've repeated or said to them in the past, that I think it's absolutely inappropriate for people other than the investigators to speculate on cases and to make assumptions when they really don't have all of the facts. Instead, what I want to do today is talk about a tool that's been used and developed by profilers at the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit. The tool is called the Victim Risk Continuum, and what it does is it helps us as we try to study the victimology or this study of the victim and understand some of the risk level that the victim is assuming, or in some cases compelled to assume, as they go through these criminal events. My hope is that by going through this, it might help you in some of your own personal crime sleuthing as you look at some of these cases on the web and consider some information about this case in Idaho. My information, like yours, comes from the World Wide Web and through reading various newspaper accounts. Now, you might not remember the names of the children, but I think you'll remember the name of the mother when I say it here. Lori Daybell, this four-time divorcee, has just entered into her fifth marriage, in a marriage to a man named Chad Daybell. Now, along the way, she had three children, I think, each of them to different fathers. But on November 5th, 2019, Lori married Chad, and the interesting thing there was that this marriage occurred 17 days after Chad's ex-wife Tammy died from what was initially disclosed as natural causes. Sometime later, law enforcement re-examined that case. They actually exhumed her body, and the autopsy results are pending, so we don't really know what the cause of death was in that case. Now, in another interesting twist, 4 months before that marriage, Lori's ex-husband, a fellow named Charles Vallow, was shot and killed by Lori's brother, a guy named Alexander Cox. And in yet another wild twist, Cox was later found, a month later, dead in an apartment in Gilbert, Arizona. Well, the children were last seen in September of 2019, shortly before Joshua was taken out of the school that he attended. The principal at Kennedy Elementary School stated that Lori indicated she was going to start homeschooling the children, and that was the last time that the children were seen or heard from. After multiple attempts by family members and then later by Rexburg police to validate the welfare of the children, the police department eventually named Lori and Chad Daybell as persons of interest in the case. They, at the time, decided to move to Hawaii and start a new life, and shortly after that, Idaho authorities issued a warrant for Lori's arrest. She was confined to jail in Hawaii and then later extradited back to Idaho, where she sits in a jail cell today awaiting her trial. Using it as a backdrop without any other discussion about a case, I wanted to just take a moment and look at the victim risk continuum. Now, again, this risk continuum was developed after agents looked at hundreds of violent criminal cases where violence against persons was involved. These were cases like sexual assaults, abductions, and murders. Criminal profilers at the FBI analyzed the data and determined that there were several areas of consistency in the data that should be considered by investigators. So as part of this victimology, or a study of the victim, it's really necessary that we also evaluate the level of risk that the victim places themselves in. Or in the case of some people, like children in this particular case, the level of risk that they are forced to assume based on circumstance, situation, and environment. So let's categorize our victims into three basic areas. First is high-risk victims, then medium risk, and low risk victims. By definition, a high risk victim would be someone that would be like a sex trade worker, or a drug addict, or a drug trafficker. In some cases, it could be the homeless, or the elderly, or people who are suffering from mental deficiencies. These folks are high risk because of their capabilities, and in some cases because of their impoverished circumstances. Generally, these people do not have a safety net behind them, family that they trust or lean upon. In many cases, they may be unemployed. And if they are working, they're usually working odd jobs here and there, or they're turning to illegal activities to try to support themselves. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have the low-risk victim. These are people like a stay-at-home mom. Their lifestyle doesn't necessarily place them in any kind of risk. They generally don't get into trouble. They're certainly not criminals. And because their circle of friends is so small, they're not generally exposed to strangers. An example of their associates might be family members or schoolmates. It could be, if they play sports, other teammates. And if they attend a church, a synagogue, or a mosque, then fellow parishioners. But regardless, it's simply outside of their character to go out and be involved in drug abuse and alcoholism and illegal activities. What we've discovered as we start to understand this victimology is that the more we understand about the victim, the easier it is to start to theorize about who the suspect might be. In effect, looking at this huge pool of possibilities and filtering it down to the probabilities. Well, crime scene evidence, witness statements, criminal statistics, all of this information has helped point to findings that are really hard to dispute in the risk continuum. And my personal experiences have proven over and again that the risk continuum, for the most part, is generally spot on. So taking this information and this spectrum, let's look at the high-risk victim. What we have found after looking at hundreds of cases is that statistically, high-risk victims are victimized by people who are strangers to them, and they're victims of opportunity. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, the low-risk victim is statistically going to be victimized by someone who is known to them. And this is kind of the frightening part. And then in those cases, they actually are a target of that victimization. With any triage technique, the victim risk continuum can be influenced by three factors: situation, circumstance, and environment. So to illustrate these influencing factors, let's create a hypothetical situation. Our example will show how a low-risk victim can become high-risk based on circumstances, situation, and environment. So to lay some groundwork, let's create our victim. In this case, it's going to be a 35-year-old married mother of 2 children. We'll refer to her as Susan. Now, Susan is a happy, low-risk individual, a stay-at-home mom. Her circle of friends is confined to the neighborhood and maybe some of her college friends, but it's a very small group of people that she knows. She doesn't drink or smoke. She doesn't engage in illegal activities like uncontrolled gambling or other kinds of things. Her weekly activities outside of a sporadic date with her husband are built more around her family. She might be driving her kids to soccer practice or to piano lessons. When she shops, she goes to the same grocery store, and it's usually on the same day of the week. If she's participating in the PTA, she might be at her kids' school periodically. And then if she worships on Sundays or on another night of the week, she might be visiting other parishioners at her local church, synagogue, or mosque. But in reality, her circle of friends is really quite small. So let's kind of move into this scenario for a minute. Imagine that it's about 11 o'clock at night and Susan and her husband are just retiring to bed after another long and very busy day with their family. The phone rings, and on the other end of the line is Susan's mother, who reports to Susan that her father had just suffered a major heart attack, and that if she was going to see her father before he died, she would need to make the 300-mile drive then and now in order to see him before he died, because he's not expected to live much longer. After hanging up, Susan and her husband have a short discussion, and Susan determines that the children's soccer and piano lessons have to go forward on the day and time that they're scheduled, so she opts to have her husband stay at home with the children, and she's going to make the drive on her own. Now, she's a rather independent person, and this is not intimidating to her, but she quickly throws her clothes in a bag and runs out and jumps into their 15-year-old Dodge Caravan, a vehicle with about 115,000 miles on it and one bald tire on the front right side that her husband just hasn't had the time or the money to get replaced. She runs to the local Piggly Wiggly and grabs her a big gulp and a bag of chips, and she's off and starting the 4.5-hour drive down to the hospital to try to see her father before he dies. About halfway through her journey, somewhere in the middle of a remote, dark, and desolate part of her state, she has a flat tire. And as she safely pulls the vehicle to the side of the road, she reaches into her purse for her cell phone, only then realizing that in her haste, she left her cell phone back at home. Now, on a darkened road in the middle of nowhere, with no idea how to change her tire, she is relying upon some highway patrolman or other good Samaritan to stop by and help her fix this tire and get on her way. Can you see how this low-risk individual has started to creep up the scale to medium or even maybe high risk based on the circumstance, the environment, and the situation that she's now in? Imagine how her risk level is going to increase if the person that comes along happens to be a serial predator, someone like Ted Bundy, for instance. It's amazing how quickly our situation and circumstance and environment can change our level of risk and change the probabilities of who the potential suspect may be. Well, I hope that you found this little exercise and a review of the Victim Risk Continuum to be helpful. And as you look at criminal cases yourself, take into account what the individual who became the victim's level of risk is. Whether the perpetrator might be known to the victim or a complete stranger. And by doing this, you might help understand, when you look at the incredibly large pool of possible suspects, who the more probable suspects might be. I hope that you found this criminal profiling quick fix to be helpful and interesting. If so, please like it. And please take a moment and visit my website. Again, that's profilingevil.com. And when you stop in at the website, register for some of our upcoming podcasts. You can even ask a question and I'll try to address it in one of the upcoming podcasts. And please remember that every community has a cadre of professionals who are standing by to help you if you're in need. If you feel victimized, or if you know of someone who's being victimized, please reach out to your local law enforcement agency, your medical health provider, or your mental health provider. And until the next time we get together, thanks, and please be safe.